my friends. Mary Rose here. It's Wednesday. It's 1 p.m. Pacific time, and that's when I love to go live on YouTube and in my Facebook group, Path of the Storyteller, to talk about story structure and writing craft with you guys. If you're here watching on Facebook, go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. Give permission to show your name. This way you won't turn up as Facebook user unless you want to be known as Facebook user, which is also okay. That's totally fine. We're going to talk today about something that I'm calling page fright. And I'm a little bit pleased with myself for thinking of that phrase. You know, I have origins in the theater, so I'm intimately acquainted with the concept of stage fright, but I know how many emotions can be stirred up when we writers contemplate the act of sharing our work with others, both on an intimate scale, showing our work to one other person, and on the public scale, being published, having our work shot out of the cannon into the marketplace to be dealt with by readers, strangers, whoever chooses to pick it up. So page fright came to me when I was thinking about how to describe this. I can't believe I never thought of it before. It's the perfect phrase. So from now on, we're going to call it page fright. And I want you guys to know that you were here when the idea of page fright was invented. So what are we going to say about page fright? Well, in a sense, I want you to help co-create what we say about page fright, because I'm really interested in knowing how the idea of page fright shows up in you, how it shows up in your writing practice. So today is a day for sure when I want the comment box to be a little busy. If you can tell me what's showing up for you, we can talk about it. So having said that, I want to tell you what I'm prepared to address from my own experience and my experience as a teacher. Oh, I should introduce myself. I can't assume that you all know me, although I see some folks in the comments already. Hey, Terry, and hey, Terry. I've got a couple of Terrys with me today. Two of my favorite Terrys are here tonight, already in the comment box. But I'm Mary Rose Wood, and I'm an author, and I'm best known for my middle grade books. You can see some of them behind me, particularly my most recent, Alice's Farm, A Rabbit's Tale. And I am also the founder of Path of the Storyteller, which is my own platform for mentoring writers and helping them gain the story structure and writing craft expertise to take their dreams of writing to a professional level. That is what we're about at Path of the Storyteller. It's a wonderful program. I'm going to be running the training again in the fall, and we have an active membership community for students who have completed the training, and they are doing some amazing work. I'm so proud of each and every one of them. All right, back to the concept of page fright. It's so scary. Page fright. What are we going to say about it today? I have about 5 big points. I want to talk about what page fright is. What exactly is it? I want to talk about who gets it. Who does it affect? I would like to talk about why we get page fright, why exactly it can feel so scary to share our precious writing with others. I want to talk about how page fright holds us back. And this is key. How does it stop us in our growth as writers? And last but not least, I want to talk about what we can do about it. What can we do about page fright? Okay, so stick with me. We've got a lot to cover. Waving hi to Nancy in the comments as well. Delighted that you're here, Nancy. I invite you, as well as anyone else who's watching live, to share your own experience of what it feels like to have page fright, what's going on in your head when you have the impulse to not share your work with others because it just feels too scary and dangerous. All right, we can weave all of that into the conversation. So let's start out by defining it. What is page fright. In its most basic manifestation, it is the equivalent of stage fright for a performer. It's when we have work to share, but we don't feel comfortable sharing it. The idea of sharing it is disproportionately frightening. It feels almost undoable. It may manifest in the body, as fear always does. It may make us feel physically shaky. We may feel like we have a very big anxious response, a big fear response to the very idea, even in a theoretical way, of taking our work, our pages, our chapter, our story, our draft of a novel, whatever it is that we're working on, and actually letting somebody else read it. That's what I mean by page fright. So it's not the same thing that people talk about when they talk about writer's block, or, I'm afraid to begin that, or I don't know how to begin. It's not that kind of block of, I can't create anything. I just can't get over that hurdle. That's kind of a different hurdle. Page fright, what I mean by it today is very particularly when we've actually written something, but we can barely bring ourselves to show it to someone else. Okay. That's what I mean by page fright. Now, second question, who gets page fright? Who's got it? Again, if you resonate with this and you're here live in the comments, you can let me know that you know the feeling of page fright. I'm going to tell you, in my experience as a writer for many, many years and as a teacher, I do believe that most writers suffer from some degree of page fright. It never feels like nothing to share your work with somebody else. It's you're never indifferent to it. It always raises your emotional state in some way. And that way is not like, I'm so excited, I just gave my first draft to my best friend and I can't wait to hear what she thinks. No, it's not that kind of excitement. It tends to manifest as fear, like, oh, I gave it to her. Oh, I wonder if she's reading it. I wonder how she likes it. I wonder what she thinks of it. I wonder if she's gotten to it yet. She hasn't said anything. Like, it has this fraught quality, right? And I think that that's true for all of us, even those of us who have a tremendous amount of experience. The first time we give a new work to someone else, it feels like something. We are hoping against hope that it goes well. We have a very hard time, not checking for messages. Not, it's like the anxious early stages of a romance. Like you're just not sure where things stand. You're looking for a clue. You're seeking a sign. So that's what it feels like. And I think that's a near universal experience. However, it does manifest in two different ways. And I think it's fair to point out, people are different. It's okay. Not everyone's going to be the same. I think most writers will have some kind of heightened energy of some kind at the thought of sharing their work with others. For many of us, I'm going to go out on a limb and say most of us, it does show up as this kind of anxiousness, as this kind of anxiety, this overinvestedness in whether the other person has read it yet, what they're saying, what they're going to do about it. But for some writers, this heightened energy level, excuse me, this heightened energy level manifests as a kind of bravado. And those writers are the ones who will take their work in progress and they will kind of shove it in front of the face of anybody who they can show it to. And I know this sounds a little comical, and I really don't mean to make fun, because honestly, I believe it is all the same thing. But we deal with our feelings differently. And some people deal with the heightened emotional state by being anxious and feeling like we have to protect ourselves. And some people deal with a heightened emotional state by getting a little more forward, a little more in your face, right? Just a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but just wanting to lean into it more as opposed to retreat. So the people who have the response, who want to lean forward into it more, are very likely to say, I'm going to post this on a on a website. I'm gonna hand this to somebody next time I meet them. I'm gonna put this in an envelope and slip it under the door. Like I'm just gonna be kind of assertive about it. But it's still inappropriate, right? Like it's still not really a healthy processing of what does it mean to share one's work. It's just intrusive. It's just a kind of a like, here, take this, read it. You didn't ask for it. You probably don't want to read it, but I'm just going to put you in that position. I'm just going to kind of shove it in your face a little bit. So again, one of those sounds more obnoxious than the other, but honestly, both of them are acts of aggression. One of them is an act of aggression against ourselves. Yeah. And one of them is a little bit of an act of aggression against other people. So listen, and the terms of how acts of aggression play out in human existence, this is a very harmless one, but I see them as two sides of the coin of page fright. So if you look at that full range of the way it can show up, it's fair to say that pretty much all writers have to deal with what that feels like, that heightened state. All right. So what is that heightened state? Why do we get into a heightened state? Why is it such a big deal to share our work with other people? Now, this is a deep question. I think it's a bigger question than it at first appears, because the easy answer is what? I'm afraid they won't like it. That's the easy answer. That's the one that's like, oh, well, of course I don't want to show it to other people because what if they don't like it? Think about this for a minute, my friends. How many times have you picked up something to read or turned on a television show for that matter, or gone to a movie and said, yeah, I don't really like this. What's the big deal? Does the author drop down dead, like 10 states away because you said you don't like it? Like, it doesn't have any impact on the author whatsoever, right? The people who created the show don't even know what you think. It doesn't hurt anyone. If somebody doesn't like something, it doesn't matter. And so what is it that's underneath that? What's underneath that glib? I'm afraid they won't like it. I'm going to riff on this a little bit because I don't know what it feels like for you. And I'd love to know. I'd love to know more about what it feels like for you. So if you're watching live, feel free to share. If you're watching the replay, put it in the comments. We'll keep the conversation going. Here's what I think, might lie underneath that. When we show our work to others, it doesn't feel like showing something to them. I made you a cup of coffee. How do you like it? Is it too strong? Too weak? You want milk? You want sugar? It doesn't feel like that. I cooked dinner for you. How do you like it? It needs a little salt? Okay, I'll get some salt. We can do that. We can share stuff with others, even stuff that we made, and not be overly attached in this kind of existential way to their reaction. But writing has a unique property. It feels like consciousness. So this is the deep stuff. This is the metaphysics of it all. When we experience ourselves, when we are alone with ourselves, how do we know who we are? How do we relate to ourselves when we're alone? We have an inner chatter. We have a sense of our minds at work, processing ideas, memories, a lot of projecting into the future, right? And sensation, a constant stream of sensation. I'm sitting in a chair. I can feel the fabric of the shirt on my body. There's a temperature, but I'm also anticipating a little bit like what I have to do later when I'm done with this talk, and reflecting on what I did earlier, and, thinking about whether I'm going to get to take vacation at the end of the summer or not. There's just this constant play of past, present, future chatter, right? A kind of a processing of ideas and language, and sensation. What did I just describe? That is fiction. That's what's on the page. When we write, that landscape is exactly what we are using language to depict on the page. We're putting down the chatter of our protagonist's inner life. We're imagining the past, we're depicting the present, we're anticipating the future, and we're continually imagining the realm of sensation that they're going through. That's how we describe stuff. We put in what our character sees, what they hear, what they smell, what things feel like. We depict their fluctuating emotional state, right? We do all of that, by the way, and we also try to tell a fantastic story with really good story structure, and that's where the art and craft of it comes into play. But fiction done well is intended to be, this is no accident, it is intended to be a simulation of consciousness on the page so that we can write something and I can give it to someone else. And if I do a really good job as a writer, they will sit down to read, and the words that I have put on the page for them are going to kick in what we call the fictional dream, and that they are going to experience as their own consciousness temporarily the world that I've created in this book. And that is what it means to say that we got lost in a book, that we feel like the characters in a book are as real or realer than the people we know in real life. We writers, we have this astonishing tool, right? This language is and consciousness are so interrelated that good fiction simulates consciousness. So when we write, we don't feel like we're making something necessarily, right? We feel like we are drawing pieces of our consciousness, of ourselves, out of ourselves and putting them on the page. And we may, in fact, be using material that rings bells with us in an autobiographical fashion. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you're writing memoir. Maybe you're writing stuff that is truly personal. But even if you're writing fiction, the emotions, the way sensation lands in the body, it's going to be your experience of being a human being because that's the experience you have. So there's going to be this sense of not just, look, I made something. Do you like it? But I dragged out chunks of my own identity and consciousness, and I'm giving them to you. It feels like a tremendously like a transparent quality, like this exposure, this ultimate exposure of the self in a way that it almost feels impossible. Like, how can we truly, I love my Star Trek metaphors, as you know, how do we truly do the Vulcan mind meld with another person? Well, we do it by writing good fiction and by reading good fiction. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. So it feels so personal. And so this notion of page fright goes far, far, far beyond, I'm afraid they won't like it. It's more like I'm showing you my inner landscape, or in a way that no inner landscape should ever be made visible. It's no longer an inner landscape. I'm making it visible. And it feels utterly exposed, disproportionate to what is actually happening, right? It's not just an exchange of, here, I wrote a couple of pages, what do you think? Or I'd like to share them with you. It feels wildly personal. So the fact that we get page fright is partly because writing feels so personal. It feels like consciousness, and it's disorienting. It's shocking to let others into what feels like our consciousness. That's not really how they're going to experience it, of course, but that's what it feels like to us. There's this kind of longing in writers, I think, to make our inner lives visible. It's one of the things that motivates us to write. But there is also this horror, right? This, oh no, that goes along with this making of the inner life visible. So the fear that someone won't like it is bad. It's like, yeah, if they don't like it. But what we're really putting on what we're really putting at stake is the fear that they won't understand us, that they won't get it, that we will have gone to this tremendous effort to depict our inner life, which depicts, something so true and real and personal, and they're just not going to get it. It's one thing to say, I read it and I didn't like it. It's another thing to say, I read it and clearly, it's this, that, and the other thing, while you, the writer, are going, wait, that's not what I meant at all. And what it moves us from emotionally is the experience of being disapproved of, or not getting, like, we got a B minus instead of an A. They didn't like it. Okay. That's not what's at stake. The hurt feelings come when we feel misunderstood. A B minus grade doesn't make us feel misunderstood, but somebody looking at something that felt so personal to us and misreading it, not getting it, treating it with care, it just makes us feel so unseen. So it goes to some very deep potential deep hurts. And listen, we all as human beings have a certain responsibility to tidy up our own inner houses, right? We all have emotional histories and wounds and baggage and things like that that impact how we go about our lives. When you're an artist, I believe you have a bit of an extra responsibility to tidy that up, because what you don't want to do is decide that you're an artist because you're going to use your art to just kind of spew your unexamined ideas and unprocessed emotions out into the world so you don't have to deal with them anymore. It's quite the opposite. We have a responsibility as artists to in some way be of service to our audience. We want to give them an experience that is ultimately going to be beneficial to them. It's about them, even if it's provocative. It doesn't mean that it has to always feel nice. Even if it's provocative, makes them think, makes them uncomfortable, we have a responsibility to give them stuff that is comes from a place of understanding and being processed. So you have to continue to do that work. So one of the things I encourage everyone to think about is, if it feels really dangerous to share your work with others, try to find out where that very vulnerable feeling is. Not the, oh, I hope they like it, I hope they give me an A instead of a B minus. Not that feeling. The feeling of, I'm going to feel so misunderstood. I'm going to be so hurt. All right. I'm going to be so, I'm going to feel so unseen if they don't react to this the way I want them to react to it. I want you to think about that feeling and where that feeling comes from in you, where it might originate from. You might need to think way, way back. You might need to do a little hard work. But that, to me, is what sits underneath page fright. I'm going to bring in a great little comment from Terry, who comes up. So I've said page fright. She's saying share shame. All right. So that's wonderful, Terry. Thank you for that. It's always so good to have a little bit of lingo in order to examine ideas, because the way we describe things really helps us frame them and understand them better. So even in Terry's comment, the difference between fear and shame is very profound, right? It's a little bit what I'm talking about. We can be afraid of, like, oh no, they won't like it. But that feeling of being hurt, of feeling shame, is a much deeper and more vulnerable feeling. This is exactly the point that I'm making. I really appreciate that you said that, Terry, because what we're looking for is where is the shame and hurt and vulnerability that might exist a few layers down below, beneath what just feels like nerves. Oh, I'm nervous to show them. I'm afraid to show them. That's not the end of the road. There's more to explore. So, it's a very disappointing feeling, right? If we expose ourselves to someone emotionally and they don't get it, they don't respond, it feels bad. It just feels bad. So, and it feels lonely. It makes us feel like we've tried to connect and we can't. And so all of that, which all sounds so heavy and deep and psychological, and certainly exists in our real life interactions with other people, it's kind of like a concentrated dose of that. When we've put in the time and effort to write something that we care about and we hand it to someone else, it's like we've distilled that, the fraughtness of everyday exchange with others, we've distilled it into this kind of compressed experience of, I wrote this here, and so of course the volatility of our emotions becomes quite exaggerated. It really becomes quite a big thing. So to me, that's the main reason, that's sort of the main issue that sits underneath page fright. But I have to say, one of my Instagram followers, I'm very grateful, just posted something this morning that I'm gonna also riff on for a second, because this writer shared that there was also a fear about having one's work stolen, and that this was an impediment to sharing work. Now, I want to say that I have heard writers say this before. I see it sometimes, that people feel that if they put their work out into the world, it will be stolen. Now, I want to be sensitive about this, because this is a fear that people have expressed, which means that it's valid and it needs to be looked at. But I also have to say that if you are, the Disney Corporation, and you have, billions of dollars of intellectual property, you have a fleet of lawyers preventing it from being stolen, because you have to protect your trademark, and there's an enormous amount of money at stake, right? I understand, like, that's a bad thing. I'm a published author, and I see on it too often that there are bootleg versions of books and audiobooks that circulate on the internet. These things get taken down pretty swiftly. Either the publisher takes them down, or the platform that's hosting it, as soon as they get an alert, they take it down. So I'm not denying the fact that there is a kind of a trade in stolen intellectual property, right? That's not what these folks are really expressing, because the work that they're afraid to share is unpublished. It has, at the moment, zero monetary value. Nobody knows what it is or who they are. It's not really stuff that would be stolen. And it's, so I just want to look at that concern and just, again, dig down. What is underneath this fear that someone might steal our work? It's a kind of a fear, I suspect, of, I had an idea for a book. I had an idea, and I'm afraid to let it out into the world because someone might steal it. And what if I never get another one? Like, that feels to me like the unspoken coda to that fear. Like, I have something, and if somebody takes it away, I have nothing. It's like, you're a writer. You make stuff up every day, right? You're a creative person. You've got ideas coming off your fingertips. You have so many ideas. You've got nothing to worry about. Like, nobody can steal your creative process. You may have a fear. So the fear that's underneath that is that this is my idea, and if somebody takes it, I have nothing. But that's not true. It's absolutely not true. In a purely practical sense, ideas are not owned by anyone. If you have an idea to write a story about a kid that goes to wizard school, write it. There are hundreds of them. One of them got really, really popular, and we know it as the Harry Potter series. There are so many stories about a kid who goes to wizard school. It doesn't matter. Kid who goes to spy school, fine. A story about a governess, a billion of them, right? Like animal stories. There's so many. There's no truly new ideas, and we don't need them to be new, right? Human beings haven't changed very much. It's one of the reasons that story structure is so reliable, because what human beings consider a good story and the shape of a good story is very, very constant. It goes back to the first evidence of storytelling that we have. And Joseph Campbell, those of you who might be interested in Joseph Campbell, was one of the very important thinkers about this very quality of not the originality of ideas, but the sameness of stories, the wonderful sameness. It doesn't make them boring. It makes them recognizable and gettable, and something that makes us feel connected to other human beings, because we gather together, we hear a great story, and we all share that feeling. It's incredible. Storytelling is an incredible path. It's very profound. So I want to suggest very gently that this fear of having one's work stolen is a bit of a smokescreen for something else. Fear that your idea is what's precious, and that you need to guard it. And it's like, no, your ideas are there's a million of them out there. The execution is yours. And there are copyright laws, and your execution of your ideas is legally protected. You don't have to worry about it. You don't. You really don't have to worry about it. So ask yourself, why am I using that as a way of, you know, not sharing my work? What's really underneath? We come up with all kinds of ways, right, to hold on to our comfort zone, but of necessity, we have to move out of our comfort zone in order to grow. It's true for us, and it's true for the heroes of our stories. So I want to say also, if you slam the brakes on your own writing, on sharing your own writing out of fear that someone else will steal it, you have already stolen your own work. Right? You've already done the thing that you claim to be afraid of, which is that you've neutralized the impact of your own work in the world by refusing to share it. So look at that. There's a logical fallacy kind of built into that fear, and it does bear close examining. So I'm going to talk for a minute about how page fright holds us back. And then I see we've got some good questions coming in the comments. So let me talk about that, and then we'll spend a little time dealing with the questions in the comments. How does page fright hold us back? All right. If it prevents us from actually showing our work to other people, there are obvious problems, right? If we want to have a career as writers, it's about publishing. And when I say publish, I'm not specifying any one type of publishing. You might publish an article on Medium. You might indie publish a book. You might have a traditionally published book and have a whole career working with the big publishers. You might publish books with small presses. There's many, many, many shapes that publishing can take. But to publish simply means to take your work and give it to the readers, to put it out in the world where strangers are not only able to access it, but invited to access it, to present it like a beautiful gift to the world. Now, no matter how great or small your dreams are of publishing, I strongly suspect that you do have some version of a dream of publishing in your relationship to your writing practice. Ask yourself, why do you write in the first place? Are you truly only writing for your own entertainment? I'm certain the answer is no. It's a lot of work to write. It takes a lot of time. And we all start out as readers, and it's the experience of reading something fantastic for most of us that gives us the ambition to be writers in the first place. And so that experience that drew us into the game is a reader's experience. We want our readers to have the experience that we had that made us want to be writers in the first place. Fundamentally, we are writing to connect with someone, not ourselves. That's why we're doing all the work. So whether you imagine yourself publishing independently or getting an enormous big money book deal from, you know, one of the big publishers, you still are on the road to publishing. So if you don't get, in touch with the causes of your page fright, and you allow it to prevent you from sharing your work, you have cut yourself off from the whole reason you're writing in the first place. All right. So let's back up a little bit. There's a lot of sharing of our work that can happen before we get to the point where we're worrying about our publishers, right? One of the things that might be a step on the journey for you is to learn to study writing. Now, if you get into a workshop or a writing class or a program of any kind, any attempt to study writing is going to necessitate you sharing your work with the rest of the group, sharing the work with your mentor, sharing the work with the instructor. You've got to show the work. Nobody can teach you how to write if you don't let them see your work. They can talk at you about good writing, but they can't help you make changes in your own work. And I want assure you, this is true for all of us, and I've got some students here attending live, and they can all vouch for this, I'm sure. Feel free to pipe up. That when we start to write, it is so much easier to see what's going on in other people's work than it is to see what's going on in our own. This is a very natural phenomenon. It is nothing to be ashamed of. It is ubiquitous. It's true of all of us. And so we can read, and I bet a lot of you have read all of the writing craft books on the shelf, but it doesn't change how we write unless we are willing to change how we write. And we ourselves may not be the best judge of whether we are changing how we write and whether that change is evident. How are we applying what we learn? The step of actually sharing our work with others, an instructor, a class, a workshop, is eye-opening. It is eye-opening. And if you let page fright keep you from committing to that type of experience, your options for learning are really limited. You're not going to have the experience of being in workshop, of taking classes, of being part of writing groups that swap work and swap feedback if you can't bring yourself to share your work with others. So this is a really, really big obstacle. It is one big way that it holds us back. We don't get the chance to share our work with readers, even readers that we may know in real life. We never show it, and it stays in the bottom drawer of the dresser, and it doesn't have an impact on the world at all. So these are serious consequences of untreated cases of page fright. They really have a negative impact. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is what we can do about page fright, how we can get past it. And I am going to pause, though, as promised. And I'm going to take a question here. Let's just see. Jaren, thank you so much for posting a question. I'm going to show it now. Great to see you here, Jaren. So Jaren says, what about the fear that what you put on the page won't stay true to the inner life you tried to expose? Gosh, this is a terrific question. This is great. So Jaren is responding, if I read this correctly, to my comments about how personal good writing is, how it feels like we're taking a chunk of our inner life, of our consciousness, putting it on the page for the world to see. It's like the old actor's nightmare where you find yourself without rehearsal, performing in a show, and you've gotten on stage and, you've forgotten to put your costume on, like it's just feels wrongly exposed. But what Jaren says is that what if what you put on the page isn't true to the inner life? This is a different kind of difficulty, right? This is the inevitable, and Jaren, I really want you to hear me say this, inevitable gap that we encounter when we try to draw the book, the unformed book, the theoretical book of our imagination, and which is in this purely energetic state, like it hasn't materialized yet. It's just in our imaginations for now. And as soon as we make it into material goods, like as soon as we start to type word after word after word, it falls so far short of what we were trying to put on the page. It no longer resembles the perfect finished masterpiece that was floating around our heads. This is a very normal part of the writing process. We have a vision for what we want to create, but we don't get to skip to the completed vision. We have a vision of what we want to create, but we always have to start at square one. And square one is going to be what, friends? It's going to be a messy mud pie of first draft. It's going to be exploratory. We're going to have to, get out the machete and bushwhack our way through a dense jungle of not knowing in order to know, in order to discover what it is that this book wants to be. And as the time is right, and for some of us that may be very soon in the process, for some of us it may take a lot of exploration. something's going to come into focus that's going to contain the key elements of what we need to know before we begin to write. I actually did a whole talk about this on an earlier live stream, so you can check on that on the channel below. What you need to know before you begin to write: who's the main character, what's wrong in their circumstance, what manner of adventure is coming to take them on a journey of transformation, and what are they going to be like at the end? Where is this going? What is the wound that needs to be healed? The external mission of what they need to accomplish, and the internal journey of change. Those, I can rattle those things off very quickly, but if you know the answers to all of those questions, you know a tremendous amount about your book. And you may not have full answers. You're very unlikely to have full, complete answers. But if you have basic answers to those questions, you've got a book in mind. Now you no longer just have, I'd like to write a book. You've gone through having the ambition of writing a book to having an actual particular book in mind. And now your first draft actually becomes a first draft. It's almost like pre-writing and then first draft. We can call it the zero draft, call it whatever you like. Everyone's process is different, but everyone will have to go through those stages in some fashion. Exploration of what it is you want to do, and then it coalesces into those sort of key things you need to know so that you can really begin writing a first draft. So it's inevitable that you'll have a certain experience of there being this gap, this shocking and disappointing gap between what's on the page and what's in your head. So if you feel that you're still in that place, it is, I'm going to use this as a very useful segue into what I want to talk about next, Jaren, which is, what do we do about it? What do we do about page fright? The first piece of advice that I want to give all of you, it sort of speaks to Jaren's question, which is, first thing you must know is, where are you in your journey with this particular work? If you're still early days, if you're doing exploration, there's probably no need to show it to anybody yet, right? You're still in the murk of figuring it out. If you're writing a first draft, that's different. You need to contemplate what would be of use to you. If you're writing a first draft by the seat of your pants and you really don't know anything about story structure, a critique group, which is a terrific thing to be part of, may be premature, because one of the things that you need to do first is to have some technique. And you're going to figure out pretty quick that if I don't have a sense of story structure, I'm going to write 20 pages and then I'll be done, or if I really gut it out, I'll get into the middle, I'll get somewhere into the second act, and then I don't know what to do anymore, and that's not something a critique group can necessarily help you with. That just requires training. Like, you just might need the training, and you can't be afraid to get it. You have to understand that if you want to write at a professional level, just like if you want to play sports at a professional level, if you want to play a musical instrument at a professional level, you're going to need lessons. You're going to have a coach. You're going to need to learn how to do it the optimal way. You're not going to figure it out yourself. Why should you? Why should you even expect that of yourself? So if that's what the next step is, then let your first exposure to getting over page fright being, well, I'm going to be a student. I'm going to do some study. I'm going to do some learning, and treat your work appropriately. Like, say, I'm not showing this to anyone in order to be told that it's perfect. I'm showing this to others because I'm a sponge for feedback. I'm eager to learn. I'm so excited about learning how to improve. That's why you're showing it to them. So the concerns about page fright get deactivated, like the heat gets turned off, because you're no longer looking for deep psychological appreciation. You're no longer looking for that incredibly rewarding feeling of being seen. This is a finished work and I really want you to love it. No, you're understanding that I am a practitioner. I'm in my apprentice stage. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play scales and do exercises. And I'm really hoping that people will help me learn to do better. If you have some training and you're writing and you're it's sort of in the practicing level, yes, being part of a critique group is terrific. But just know that when you're in a critique group, you're going to be in with other writers, and those writers are likely to be your peers, more or less, right? They're not going to know much more than you do. Right? Like there's going to be always in a critique group, there will be a range. But the nature of things tends to be that if somebody is a very experienced writer and they're participating in a critique group with less experienced writers, they're not going to be an unpaid instructor, right? They're going to do better in a critique group of people of their own experience level. And so groups over time tend to level out to be people of similar levels of experience, right? That's my point. So being in a critique group is fantastic because it gives you the opportunity of seeing your work the way other people see it. And that can be shocking. We have a hard time, most of us, being objective. So it's a very valuable experience. But is it the right thing for you at this moment? So that's why our first step when we say, what do we do about it, is to know where you are in the journey. Is it time to share your work? And if it is time to share, where is the right venue? What is the appropriate venue? Is it about study? Is it about getting into a critique group? Is it about finding a community of fellow writers to support you? And I'm going to tell you something. Ironically, I've seen this happen very often. Somebody finishes a piece of work, and page fright is real. And the move that writer makes is not to show it to others necessarily, or to study, or to be part of a critique group. They'll decide to query it. And by query, I mean write a query letter and submit it to agents. And I'll tell you something, this doesn't cost you anything. I was going to say it doesn't cost you anything but a stamp, but nowadays it doesn't even cost you a stamp because it's all done online. And they have a probably an unspoken, unacknowledged belief that it's better to get it over with. It's better to get a professional opinion of their work than to just shove it in front of the noses of everyone that they know. And also, the prospective agent is a stranger. The stakes are low. You don't have to feel that I'm going to show this to my friend. I'm going to show this to my spouse. I'm going to show this to my kid, whoever it is that you think might be a good early reader for you. And I'm still going to be in a relationship with that person later. And so if this doesn't go well, I'm going to have to really deal with my feelings in an ongoing way because this person is part of my life. The agent is a stranger, and it's odd. It's counterintuitive and yet totally understandable, right? That sending a query letter to a strange agent for many writers feels less frightening than actually showing your manuscript to someone that you know and getting that kind of opinion. Alas, what happens is that these manuscripts are in no way ready to be shared as agent submissions. They're usually quite in early draft stage, and then rejections come. And what we end up with, and I'm sure that you all know this from your own interactions with the writing community, there's just a lot of writers out there who are like, oh, I sent out my thing, I got 200 rejections, publishing's terrible, there's no way in, I'm going to quit. It's like, wait a minute. If you sent something out and you got 200 rejections, like, what did you send them? That's my question. It's like, what did you send them? Did you send them something that was ready to be shared? You didn't. It wasn't ready yet. So this is a super important concern, right? I don't want you guys to leave this talk and saying, I'm not going to have page fright anymore. I'm going to send my work everywhere. I'm going to do it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to make Mary Rose proud. Look, I'm already super proud of you. If you're still watching, you are committed. You want to develop as a writer. I love having you here on these live streams. We're going to get through a lot of stuff together. And I know that you're going to grow and develop. Maybe you'll come be a student of mine someday. I would love that. But don't take what I'm saying as an exhortation to just show your work anywhere and everywhere. Know what stage of the journey you're in. Okay. That's the main thing. And if it's time to share, choose the right venue. Chances are you either need to be in some kind of training environment where there is a more experienced writer whose job it is to elevate your technique. That's their job, and they will do it and they will help you. If you want to be in a critique group, that is an experience that will be driven by peers, and chances are you will all be about the same level. So you will learn a lot, but you're not going to have the benefit of instruction from a more experienced writer. Okay. If you have something that is, if you're trained and it's been critiqued and you've gotten through page fright at these lower levels, and your page fright is simply hanging around the threshold of presenting it to the industry, just do it. And you just got to woman up, man up, do it. You got to put on your big person pants and do it. If it's been through the appropriate levels of being shared, and you are now just afraid to take that last step and query it and get it out there into the big leagues, you have to do it. And there may be rejections. There probably will be some rejections, right? Is it going to hurt you? It's not. The only way you can get hurt by rejections, if is if there's like a dump truck of rejection letters, thousands and thousands of them, and you just happen to be standing there when it backs up and dumps them all upon you, you could get hurt. You might crack a rib from that. But luckily, that's not how they arrive. It's all done by email. Nobody gets hurt, right? So the danger, once again, we're going to circle back to the beginning here. The danger is a bit of an illusion. It's our lizard brain. It's our fight or flight response. It's our vagus nerve. It's all of those parts of our nervous system that have a tendency to exaggerate the danger that we're in. We are not literally being chased by a lion. We're just showing our work to somebody. Nobody can get hurt. Like nothing's going to happen. If you really relate, if you relate hard to the suggestion that your anxiety responses tend to exaggerate, if you feel in mortal peril over what are really very rationally harmless situations, the two things that you can do is to do a little exploration about where those super vulnerable, triggers come from for you. That is personal work. We're all triggered by something, and if you get to know your own triggers, it will help you. And then, of course, there are practices, and they are super simple. And there are versions of them in all kinds of traditions. So if you have a spiritual tradition, chances are it's already got a version of this. If it doesn't resonate, simple meditation is known. There's lots of data. It has a really good scientific track record of teaching our nervous systems to not overreact. And so you can just get together with some kind of very simple meditation practice. You can Google it. There's so many YouTube channels that will teach you how to do simple breath meditation. You're just training your nervous system not to freak out over things that are illusions, right? When we read a book that's super scary, our hearts can pound and we can get so excited and we can't wait to turn the page, right? That's what the illusions of mortal danger can do to us. It's not an intellectual exercise. It gets in our bodies. We have a reaction. When we know it's an illusion, there's a kind of delicious entertainment about it, right? Some people really love those kinds of stories. But when we create a story ourselves about, if I show my work to people, I will die, we know that it's nonsense, but it literally can feel like that in the body. We have to remember that too is just a story that we've made up. It's not so. Nothing bad will happen. All right. So I recommend simple breath-based meditation for anybody who's looking for a practice, but you've all got access to your own traditions and your own influences about that, but find something and apply it and see if it makes a difference in how you think about things. You start to be able to separate what's real danger and what's just a story you made up. And as writers, if we can't recognize when we ourselves are making up a story, come on, we can do better than that. We should be really good at this. All right. So I really want you to think about that. All righty. So I'm just going to take a quick last look at the comments. Yeah, Jaren addresses the idea of the fear of having one's work stolen. I'm just going to share this briefly. One could skip the whole copyright thing and put published work into the public domain. Well, why would we do that though? You know, that is an effect saying, instead of waiting for people to steal my work, I'm just gonna give it all away. Instead of waiting for people to steal my money, I'm just gonna drop it all in dollar bills off the top of the Empire State Building. You know, it is not. It's not a solution to the problem. It's just in a way kind of circling back, right, to a kind of a strange misconception of what it means to own work and have it stolen. But there is such a thing as the public domain, and law regulates this. You know, when we create something, it's automatically under copyright. It's useful and advisable to actually register copyright, but when you create something, it is yours. And that's not true of ideas. It's not true of titles, but it is true of the work itself. Great. I don't see too many more questions. I see some really nice comments about being able to see stuff in other people's work that you can't see in your own. So we're sort of validating that. And Terry's got another great comment. Connecting the idea of page fright back to stage fright. Terry, thank you for this. As an actor, I was always more freaked out auditioning or performing in front of friends than strangers. Exactly, right? It's a natural thing. It's a very natural thing. Somehow we feel that the people who know us are going to see through. They're going to see through the performance of what we're doing to some deeper layer. It's actually, we feel a little bit more exposed. Performing in front of strangers, we don't have to face those people again, right? We don't have to worry about what they thought, but we're going to have an ongoing relationship with people in our lives. And so what they think, we process in a different way because it's part of the fabric of our whole interaction with those people. All right, guys, thank you so much for spending this time. I think this is a really interesting topic. I know that lately we've done some very technical, very nerdy deep dives into writing craft and story structure in particular. It's been a while since we did a big talk about some of the mindset issues that affect writers. But I just want to say that I feel that talking about these issues is extremely important, because you can have all the perfect story structure and writing craft in the world, but if your page fright prevents you from actually engaging with the reader, sharing your work, getting, out there, getting the training you need, being part of critique groups, being part of the writing community, stepping forward, letting your work have an impact in the world, what good is it? So we always, in all human endeavors, we have to balance the technique of how to do what we do with also the mindset of exploring our inner landscape, understanding why we do what we do, and really getting in touch with the obstacles that we may put in our own way. Those are ultimately going to be the toughest things to get over. I could teach any of you story structure and writing craft. I promise you, it's teachable and learnable. But the mindset stuff, we really have to dig in to ourselves. And it's a challenge, and I know that. So I really appreciate you guys being here today. I hope to see you at future live streams on Wednesday at 1 p.m. If you want to get an email notification, please join my mailing list. It's www.pathofthestoryteller.com. If you go there, you'll get a chance to sign up. You'll start getting a weekly email from me with a heads up about what we're going to talk about, and other news to come as well, including our fall enrollment of the Path of the Storyteller training. Okay? Have a wonderful week and keep writing.